Hi, my name is Allie, and this is my video diary for our trip to Amsterdam and Poland with the South Carolina Council on the Holocaust. So throughout this video, I'm going to be talking over a lot of the pictures that you'll see explaining what's happening and what our experiences were like. So on the first day, we arrived in Warsaw, Poland, and that first night we got the opportunity to listen to a woman named Anna speak. And Anna was a teenager in Poland during the war, and we got to hear her recount her experiences during the war when her and her mother helped hide Jewish refugees. And this was really interesting because I've heard stories about Jews in hiding, but I've never heard stories about the people who are helping them, the ones who are actually hiding them. So it was really interesting to hear Anna's account of what was going on. Now, the next day, we went to a Jewish cemetery in Warsaw. And this was also interesting. It was different than listening to Anna speak because we got to actually see the bullet holes from the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and we got to see the sewer that the Jews could have used to escape, and we got to see a hiding place that Jews actually lived in temporarily during the war. And it's things like this that I really want to bring back to my classroom, because it's one thing to hear about it, but it's a whole nother thing to actually see it and to be able to experience it yourself in a way. Later in the day, we went to the Poland Museum, which is a museum entirely dedicated to Jewish history in Poland. Our museum guide told us about Jewish persecution dating all the way back to the Middle Ages up into the present. But she also spent a good time of our tour focusing on positive aspects of Jewish life and the contributions that they've made to Polish society. Treblinka was one of the more surprising places we visited, mainly because it was so small. The area between the train tracks and where the gas chambers once stood just shows you how streamlined the whole extermination process was. When I would always picture concentration camps and death camps in my head, I always thought they had to be these pretty big places. They had thousands of people coming in each day. But the small size of Treblinka just shows you how efficient the Nazis were in what they did. The Majdanek concentration camp was more along the lines of what I expected a concentration camp to look like. It wasn't as small as Treblinka, but you could still see from one end of the camp to the other. It had the gas chamber, the crematorium, it had the barracks in rows, and this was more along the lines of what I was expecting. The one thing I wasn't expecting, though, was the heat and the humidity inside the barracks, and that's something that the textbooks can't really prepare you for. No matter how much you read, you're never fully prepared for how you feel when you actually get there. We spent the entire next day at Auschwitz, and the first thing I noticed when I got there was that it almost reminded me of a college campus. It was very organized, it was nice, clean, there was green grass everywhere. It definitely was not what I was expecting. Our tour guide Marcelina informed us that Auschwitz was not built by the Nazis from the ground up. It was originally a Polish army base. So a lot of the brick barracks that you see that the Jews lived in, those were for the Polish army. Now, when the Nazis first took over the base, they didn't immediately start shipping thousands and thousands of Jews there. It was originally used for political prisoners, which I think is a very big misconception about the camp. Another misconception is that everyone who went to Auschwitz got a tattoo with a number on their arm. However, this actually didn't start until 1943, and it was only for Jewish prisoners who were not sent directly to the gas chambers. One of the most powerful things at Auschwitz for me was seeing the personal stories and the pictures and the home videos of these Jews who didn't survive the war. Seeing a video of a family skiing, it reminded me of my family and what we do for fun, and it also reminded me that these are just ordinary people living ordinary lives. So coming up, you're about to see some of the home videos we saw in one of the barracks at Auschwitz. Auschwitz-Birkenau was much larger than I was expecting. I was kind of thinking it'd be more along the size of Majdanek. But when we first got to Birkenau, looking out and seeing rows and rows of chimneys from what used to be barracks just showed you how large this whole operation was, and it was really eye-opening. What you're looking at now are the remains of one of the gas chambers and crematoriums at Auschwitz-Birkenau. This is the entrance to the underground gas chambers, and these gas chambers could hold about 2,000 people at a time, whereas the crematoriums could only hold up to about 1,400 bodies at a time. But this is still a huge number, and I think it just shows how industrialized the Nazis had this whole killing system. One of the great things about this trip is that after seeing so much, we were able to get together with the other teachers and debrief and talk about what we saw and how we felt. Next, we went to the Oskar Schindler factory, and this factory didn't just focus on Schindler and his list that he's most known for, but it focused on Jews throughout the war, especially in Krakow. The museum had a lot of pictures showing Jewish life before the war in Krakow, but it also showed the destruction that the Nazis brought with them. Some of the pictures were rather disturbing, especially the ones showing the men cutting off the Jewish man's hair. And it really made me think, what causes people to be like this? What causes people to commit such atrocities? And do they not realize what they're doing and that it's wrong? The next day, we flew from Krakow to Amsterdam, and we got to take a VIP tour of the Anne Frank house, which was really neat. Our guide, Norbert, gave us background information to the Frank family and what they did before the war, and then we were actually able to go around and explore the annex where the Franks stayed for almost 2 years. The annex was extremely small, and people actually had to walk in a single-filed line throughout the entire annex. I really enjoyed being able to walk through the annex where the Frank family lived, and also seeing Anne's diary, But I think the biggest takeaway I got from the Anne Frank house was just how quiet they had to be during the day. During our tour, Norbert took us into Otto's office, which was about 2 floors down from the annex, but we could still hear every single noise someone made when they walked in the annex. And it just shows you how quiet the Franks had to be throughout the day, because any sudden movement and someone down below could hear. The next day, we had a guide take us around the city of Amsterdam and give us a tour of the city. He took us to the Portuguese synagogue, which was built in 1675 and made of wood. He also told us about the history of the city of Amsterdam and how the Dutch became traders. He took us to different Holocaust memorials around the city. He also took us to a former Yiddish theater where the Jews were held temporarily until they were shipped off to concentration camps and work camps. We also got to see an exhibit at the National Holocaust Museum called The Persecution of Jews in Photographs, and these are the photographs that you're looking at right now. I really like this exhibit, and I hope to bring back a lot of these photos to show in my classroom, because I feel like when we study the Holocaust, we mainly focus on the Jews as victims, and I want my students to know that there was more to them than that. Overall, this trip has taught me a lot, and I hope to bring my experiences and a lot of the information that I've learned back to my classroom to help my teaching and to help my students. Well, that's the end of my video diary, so thanks for watching.